The year was 1986. I was in my car driving to lunch in high school, and my friend had made a mixtape, and 3 of the songs were from the Big Shot Chronicles. It was Erica's Word, Where You Going Northern, and Read Jenna's Rain. And pretty much just after the first time I heard those 3 songs, then I went out, bought the Big Shot Chronicles, bought Real Nighttime, and it just went from there. You know, it's definitely just like, it's sort of still sinking in, but it's like, just even though I didn't know him personally, and you know, it's obviously worse for his family, friends, and children. You know, just like looking back, the overall impact, you know, that it had over my lifetime, it's like pretty huge.
Must be the approach of light speed I see things before the start. What it's like in prison, and the good and bad reasons for laws, the excuses, then the outcomes, then the cause.
And I went off to college and suddenly found all this great music that has nothing like the stuff I grew up on. And you know, I was a pretty good nerdy English major kind of guy, and here was this guy suddenly that was as into James Joyce as he was Led Zeppelin. So you had these you know, great melodies, but these incredibly clever lyrics, just great wordplay, and I said, man, this is really something that I can sink my teeth into. I'd never really heard songwriting like that, and you know, as a guy that's as interested in words as I am in music, that was a real gift to me, especially at a time when I was just learning to write songs. So when I first heard, I guess it was Real Nighttime. It was probably the first album I heard in the mid '80s when I was at I was a DJ over at the Wake Forest College radio station, and I said, yeah, this stuff is for me. And then when I found out, you know, that there was a local connection, you know, the recordings with Mitch Easter, you know, I was just learning about Let's Active and all the amazing production work that he was doing over there. You know, when I learned that this California band had a local angle to it, that just really, you know, that cemented it for me. So I was definitely a big fan from there on.
I was in college at Michigan State University, and I only used to shop in the import record bins, so I probably would have never discovered them, except they had a record out on a French label, Lolita Records, called Dead Center, which was like a compilation of a couple of the first EPs they had out, and that's when I discovered them. And but, you know, back then, I mean, you couldn't hear records. I mean, you never knew what bands sounded like. You might have read something about them. And I just kind of went on the cover. I mean, they looked like people that would make music that, you know, I'd like to listen to. And it was. I mean, I loved everything on there, and I bought everything that came before that, and then, of course, followed them all through the careers of Game Theory and the Loud Family.
And misdirected, trying to find the ground. The Regency Hotel.
I mean, somebody who I'd been talking to said he just wrote these, you know, painfully personal songs, and they really are. I mean, they're tough songs to try to recreate in a band setting. They're tough songs to try to just sit and figure out on guitar. I mean, they're very idiosyncratic. I mean, they're not in 4, you know, they'll be in 5, or they'll be, you know, something thrown in there that'll throw you off a little bit. Yeah, I love the bands he was in. I mean, I love the, you know, the way he wrote lyrics and the way he threw all these chords into these songs. I mean, he just, anything he could fit into these songs, you know, he did, and then just would layer them. And the production too, and the way Mitch Easter made those records sound. So yeah, absolutely him, and you know, lots of bands of that era, you know, sure, were a big influence on me.
I'm sorry, Mr. Snooze. All right, well, I first became acquainted with Scott's music when a band I was playing with at the time called Bus Stop, in about 1993, went down to the brewery in Raleigh to play a gig that we headlined. Didn't know who the opener was going to be, and got down there and found out that it was a band called the Loud Family. I'd never heard of the Loud Family as of 1993. They blew me away. I loved them. Almost felt a little embarrassed to play after them because their music was so inventive and just from outer space and had no limits. And I almost felt pedestrian my band Bus Stop. I felt like we almost were lazy compared to the music that they had produced before us on the stage. I mean, they were just brilliant, and it was a night I'll never forget. And so I knew right away, okay, I need to know more about Scott Miller and the Loud Family. And then my buddy Mike Slaughter hooked me up with a couple of Loud Family recordings, and so I was hooked instantly. You know, there's no need for an explanation for me, for anyone who listens to Scott's music who doesn't understand the brilliance and the risk that he takes with everything he does, and the adherence to doing what he wants to do rather than what he thinks lots of people are going to dig. And he's been really inspirational to me as far as being a lifelong musician, and Scott never seeming to get the accolade he deserved. He's always seemed to be a very undercredited musician, and people like him inspire me to do what I do. I just find his work very inspirational, his work ethic, and his approach to music, his unconventional approach to music, very inspiring, and kind of helped teach me not to be so lame in my songwriting approach. It kind of helped push me to continue to do things that were unexpected, that broke rules in the songs that I wrote personally. So to that, I will always be grateful. Scott Miller.
Blow off the dust in Houston, burn off the fog in London, I can spill off the docks in Boston.
Well, I'm Jerry, and I'm playing bass tonight, and I grew up here in Winston-Salem, but I live in Mount Airy, North Carolina now, and I went to college in Greenville, South Carolina at Furman University, where I worked for the radio station, WPLS, and some of the guys there turned me on to the first Game Theory. I think it was an EP, but I remember pretty distinctly hearing Red Baron and Sharp Pretty. That was the first ones I heard, and got pretty excited about it and sort of followed them. I never got to see them live, so I was never, I wouldn't say I was a fair weather fan, but I just never had the opportunity to go live. But I kept up with all the Game Theory records, and then moved into the Loud Family. And I don't have a huge history with the band, but I was always a fan, and happy to be part of the show here tonight.
Sharp like contrivances, she stands alone, the leaves hanging low, and only the sun down your lane. Sometimes your breath's too short to understand.
Doug Davis asked me to fill in on drums for a job for this guy named Scott Miller that had passed away recently. Started listening to the music and charting out what we were going to play, and discovered that it was pretty cool stuff, and discovered that he had a lot of loyal fans that were very appreciative of his music and what he had done, and obviously had a talent. He seems to be a guy that sang and played from the heart, and whatever came out of his mouth rhythmically, being a drummer, ended up in several different time signatures sometimes, and so that made it a little tricky to chart out, having never heard the stuff before. But here we are a week later, and hopefully I'll pull it off.
when we were picking songs to do, this is one of the ones that was suggested and didn't make the final cut for a full band, so I felt like it needed to be represented. Must be the words, need the expression, hit up depression right now. I was 16 years old, going to R.J. Reynolds High School, and just a sponge for music at the time. And I went to the Record Exchange and bought this sampler CD called Enigma Variations. And it was, the only reason I bought it was because it was like $6 and it had like 30 bands on it. And I didn't know any of them, so I was like, well, this is great. So I got home and there was some, put it on, and it was great stuff on there. TSOL. First time I'd ever heard of them. These bands like Tex and the Horseheads. Let's see. Agent Orange was on there. A lot of California bands. And anyway, buried on the second side was this track by Game Theory called 24. And it so stood out from everything else that was on this compilation. But it was just fantastic. And I just remember listening to it over and over and over again. Their next album, Big Shot Chronicles, came out, and I obviously immediately bought it. And they had a song on there called Erica's Word. It's a fantastic song. And it was all over MTV, and after that, man, I went and started buying the old stuff, and then everything that came out after that. And I was like, Game Theory, Scott Miller was one of those guys that I was just rabid about. Anything new that he had, I bought it like the day it came out. I mean, all the way up to the bitter end. I got everything. I got all the DVDs and I had all kinds of bootlegs of live tapes and stuff, and I only ever got to see them play once, and it was on the first Loud Family tour. They played at the brewery in Raleigh, and I had the pleasure of talking to him for about, 20 minutes, and had a nice little chat. We talked about guitars, we talked about his songwriting, and just talked about stuff, and I bought a CD from him and a t-shirt and stuff like that. And then a buddy of mine came up and kind of cornered Scott and made him really uncomfortable, and then he took off. Because it was great, because the way we were standing, Scott kind of had me cornered, so it wasn't uncomfortable for him. But then my buddy came and kind of like pushed him over on the same side as me, and so then he got awkward and he left. So I was like, damn it, man, you cock blocked me, I was like. So anyway, it was just pretty funny. But I never got to see him again, but I bought every record they had, every record he made, and if he was working on a new one now, and I would have bought it as soon as it came out, I guarantee you. But I don't realize what a big influence he is on me. I didn't realize what a big influence he was on my songwriting until I started learning these songs, and I realized how much I use a C sharp minor chord, which I think just about every song of his has a C sharp minor in it somewhere, but he was so incredible with his chord changes, and it was just awesome. So big influence on me, probably top 3 biggest influences on me. Just a fantastic songwriter, and just really weird, and I cop a lot of his lyrics too. In my own songs, there's probably a line or two here and there, or at least a phrase that I stole, because they just get stuck in your head and you can't help it. You don't realize where it comes from, but it's just there.
I first heard Scott's music in 1986 when I was friends with a guy named Ronnie Estes who worked at a record store in Greenville, South Carolina called Horizon Records. And he was a good friend of mine. And he, one Saturday, or it was a Sunday, he said, "You need to check this out." And so he was kind of a musical mentor of mine. And he handed me a copy of the Big Shot Chronicles on cassette. And so I bought it, completely flipped out over it. And the next thing I know, I'm buying the Big Shot Chronicles on vinyl and playing it to death. And especially the track Regenus Ran, which is an incredible song. It's my favorite Scott Miller song to this day. And when I hear it, it gives me chills. I think it's if there's a song that stands out in his catalog, that one stands out to me as being the most spiritual song. And the track itself means, if I remember reading from him in an interview, it means regeneration plus Israel plus rain. And so that's where he got the title from, as a hybrid there. And anyway, so that's always been a very special song to me, and that album is my favorite album of all time. And so when I saw that Game Theory had put out a CD, I had just got a CD player, so I got a copy of Lolita Nation, which is one of my the very first CDs I ever owned, and which I still have, and would never trade for anything. And then I remember in the early 90s, they put out reissues of Real Nighttime and the Big Shot Chronicles on CD. And I bought those. I bought all the Game Theory catalog that was available on CD when it came out, after I learned about the band. And always been a huge fan. And when I first got a computer, the very first thing I did was check out the Loud Family website. And I got on Loud Fans around the year 2000. I was on that for several years. When I got the news that Scott died, it was like I got hit by a car, and it was like being sideswiped. The other week, I really looked up to Scott. He was a very special person to me because I looked up to him like a mentor, and he was a hero of mine. And I really did, when I was young, I really did idolize him a lot. He had all the qualities of an artist and musician that I wanted to be myself. And I have about as much in common with Scott physically as I don't know, probably Abbott and Costello, but as far as artistically, I always thought that he was the greatest musician I'd ever heard, and his lyrics were incredible, and his music just struck a chord in me that no other artist that I've ever heard has done with me. And I used to send him, I developed a friendship with him. I used to send him albums because I work at a public radio station for fun, and I used to work at a record store, and I used to send him albums for fun, like just to see what he thought of them. I would send him, because at the time I was following music a lot, about 10 years ago, so still following it closely. I guess maybe I've gotten older and fogied out a bit of following new music, but I used to follow music religiously, and if I got a release that I thought he would like, I would send it to him and see and I wanted to get his feedback because I valued his feedback, because his intellect Scott was brilliant. So I treasure memories I have of getting feedback from him about music, and I even went to him a couple times for personal advice. And he's always very accommodating, always very nice, and he treated his fans like gold. Always a gentleman.
When I learned of it was total accident of timing. It was 96. It was Inner Babe Concern. Basically, I moved to Boston in fall of 96, and a month or two later, Inner Babe Concern was released, and I had in the meantime discovered the Boston Phoenix, which was the cool alternative newspaper back then, which died 1 month before Scott Miller did. But anyway, they did a review of Inner Babe Concern. It was a rave, and I'd only known the paper for a month. I didn't necessarily know to trust their judgment, but they were quoting song titles like Top Dollar Survivalist Hardware and Sodium Laureth Sulfate, and I No Longer Fear the Headless, and I was like, okay, yeah, I would like to hear this record. And I was at a point in my life where buying a CD brand new was a genuine strain on my budget, and buying one by a band that I could potentially not like at all was a risk, and I did it. The whole strange calculus weirdo cover helped too. Not that even calculus was kind of where math started to lose me, but still, I liked the concept. And so, fell in love with the music, and the liner notes happened to mention the Loud Fans online forum, which was, and I'd never joined an online forum or anything before either, but I was like, yeah, okay, I wonder what it's like. And what it was like was full of smart, nerdy people who appreciated smart, nerdy music, and I was like, home! And so, just by becoming, I started making friends with all these people, some of whom lived in Boston. For whatever reason, they had this weird Boston following, so I actually could meet some, and some of them just became kind of, important parts of my life from thousands of miles away, but it just made sure, even if the music didn't, which it did, that this Loud family were going to become a very important part of my life.
Let's see, it was back in the 90s. My husband, Mark Portier, at the time, his girlfriend from high school, Liza, sent a mixtape to him, and she has the best taste in music of anybody ever, and so her mixtapes were killer, and she included some Game Theory tracks. I'm sorry, I don't remember which ones, but so we were hearing them. And then in about, I guess it was 91, Mark and I moved to Austin, Texas on the day that Stevie Ray Vaughan died. Yeah, heartbreak. And it was like 110 degrees in Austin, and so we holed up in this apartment of this friend of ours who is a programmer, Grady Wilson, and he had his apartment blocked so that no sun would come in, no heat, and he had Game Theory CDs, and so we just spent a day or two inside just immersing ourselves into the music, and pretty much I know that Mark has listened to Scott's music probably every single day since then for the last 25 years, 30
Wow.
years. Yeah. And so I mean we're hardcore fans, and I'm just heartbroken that he's not here, but what a wonderful evening this has been to celebrate his music and be with other fans, and just there was a lot of love in the room tonight, and I'm just grateful that people picked it up, Rob, and made this happen. And I saw Game Theory. I never saw Game Theory because they were broken up by the time that we figured out that they were great. But I saw Loud Family play many times, and I always loved meeting the other fans on the list. We when the internets came along, when interwebs came along, I think the first thing that I did was look for REM lyrics, and I was like, okay, what the hell are they saying? And then the second thing was, okay, Game Theory, what's going on with them? And we ended up finding the Loud fan list and joining up on that, and living in California and other places, got to see them play in Austin, San Francisco, LA, got to see them play with Amy Mann. Amazing experiences, and just everybody was always so sweet and accessible. Allison and Gil and Kenny, and of course Scott, and then I was always too shy to really talk to Scott. So what I would do, and I mentioned this earlier to you, is that I would, instead of telling him this is my favorite song, at one point Where They Walk Over St. Teresa is my favorite song. Mm-hmm. So I went to a Catholic, one of those Catholic stores, and I got a St. Teresa medal, and so I did the fangirl thing and gave him, and that said it all. This is my favorite song, and he got that. So that was really, really, that was fun to do, and it was always just really fun just hanging out before and after shows with everybody. And there was one show in particular in LA. They played Spaceland, and Ken Stringfellow was there just, playing, and Beetle Bob. I don't know if you guys know Beetle Bob. He's this guy that goes out every night in LA and wears like a tuxedo and stuff and just rocks out. And so he was there. So it was like a rock star night. It was brilliant, and yeah, a lot of good memories, a lot of good time, and love their music. You can just listen to Scott's music over and over again and always find new music.